What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here on Sherdog.com, and BetUS.com is offering our listeners an incredible 125% bonus on their deposit for UFC Fight Night Lemus versus Andrade. Use the code Sherdog and get $2,500 in extra money to make Fight Night even better. At BetUS.com, you can not only bet on each fight, but there are loads of awesome parlay bets to choose from too. Bet live during the fights and your winnings are paid within hours. Start the fight at betus.com and use that code Sherdog. Alright everyone, let's get straight into it here, and the PFL is back, and I'm going to be previewing episode 1, or night 1 even, of the, I think it's a 10-night PFL season. I did all the previews for I think every card last year. Maybe I started a few cards in, but I really enjoyed it, and I thought there was some very, very good fighters on it. I enjoyed watching the cards. Bruno Capoloza was a guy who really stood out to me. Antonio Carlos Jr. had a great year. You know, we saw the Radzhabov, Brendan Loughnane, with loads of stars, and most of them are back from this year, for this year even, and I'm looking forward to the season. There was supposed to be almost a humongous card starting off on week 1. We still have a good card, and I will break it down in a second. Ireland's own Miles Price was supposed to fight Anthony Pettis on this card, but that fight has been moved a couple of weeks down the line, so it's not off or anything like that, so it's all well and good. But I think it would have been a mega card only for that, but it still is a relatively good card. And before I get into it, maybe an ongoing thing as we talk about PFL down through the next few weeks, and I think they're doing like three fights in a row, a few weeks off, 3 fights in a row, a few weeks off, 3, and I like that. I think that's very good. I like the way they do that. They're not kind of, you know, they're not overblowing themselves, I suppose. I want to talk a little bit about how the PFL is working, how the cards are going, how the cards are being laid out, maybe the matchmaking, maybe the production and all of that as we go. And at a point where we are now, I'm interested to see what they do differently right before it starts, because last year, you know, they have the magic cage with all this stuff, and they have all the stats coming up on screen, and they have the different weird judging things and all of that. Now, I, as someone who enjoys production and things like that, I liked most of it, honestly. I'm someone who's talks a lot about judging. Wasn't the biggest fan of the judging part, especially Verdict MMA. Not a big fan of that at all. I don't know if it's just used for fans, no problem, but the fact that it's shown on screen and people think they're the actual scores, or that maybe is how it should be scored, is I think ridiculous, and I think they need to get away from that if they talk about being this fight league. And you know, it's all about merit, and it's all about fact, and it's all about stats and all like that. I think you need to look at the facts of the actual judging criteria, and not some made up one that the made up one that Sean O'Connell seems to have made up, it feels like, but I don't think he did, but he seems to love it. And then the Verdict MMAs, which just lads off the street who have never read the criteria just deciding who their favourite fighter wins the fight, you know. So I think they need to get rid of that, but I do like the other parts of it. I like, you know, even something stupid like he hit him at 35 kilometers an hour or something like that. Look, it's something different, and I think in MMA you need to be a little bit different. Does it make sense? Is it like factually correct and stuff like that? Some of that stuff, maybe not. But I like there's a different. The production is a bit different. The commentary is good. I like Sean O'Connell. I think Kenny Florian is a guy who I've maybe criticised in the past when he was in UFC years ago, but I actually think he's improved an awful lot, and I think he's very good with them. And you know, Randy is Randy as well. I think some people like him, but some people maybe don't. But in general, I think the commentary is pretty good. The ring announcer is very good as well, and other things. So as we go throughout the year, I'll be interested to kind of get a gauge on what people are thinking of it, and I'll let you know what I think of it as well as the year goes on. But we wait for the first event, I suppose, and we will obviously talk about it maybe more next week. Let's talk about some of the fights on night 1. And the first fight, the one that sticks out to me honestly in this card, and I think it should be the main event, it's not the main event, is Clay Collard versus Jeremy Stephens. This is a real fun fight in the lightweight division. Look, Jeremy Stephens has fought them all down through the years. He's had a great run in the UFC. Now he's outside of the UFC. And look, we know him as one of the most exciting fighters in the world. He just throws it all out there. The hardest hitting 145 pounder in the world, now up to 155. So let's see if he can bring that up there. Clay Collard gave it all he could do to Anthony Pettis last year. Went to boxing and did pretty well. Now he's had some heavy knockouts and he's had some losses as well in boxing and in MMA. So I'll be interested to see what he looks like and if he can kind of keep it going. But I thought, like, if you look at his run last year, I thought it was pretty good. Like, he lost to Raush Manfio, who's fighting in the main event here, and we'll talk about it in a second. But he beat Schulte in Leatherback. He beat Anthony Pettis in the PFL, and before that he had a few fights. It was 2019. His fights are before that, actually. So he went 2-1 last year in the PFL in April, June, and August. So that was a pretty good run there. Jeremy Stephens, obviously coming out of the UFC, he lost his last 6 fights in a row. Well, 5 of his last 6, and then the accidental headbutt against Jair Rodriguez. But he's fighting Gamrot, he's fighting Cater, he's fighting Rodriguez, he's fighting Aldo, he's fighting Magomed Sharapov. So losing those fights, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But this fight, like, the reason I think we're all looking forward to it, and the reason I'm looking forward to it, it's probably going to be a stand-up battle on the feet between two guys just like throwing bombs at each other, and I think the PFL, it encourages that at times as well, because you get more points for the first round and all of it. I honestly don't pay too much attention to that stuff, but I'm sure the fighters do, and I'm sure they'll want to be doing that as well and want to be getting early finishes. And when you're fighting as well in a few weeks' time, in the second round, it's going to benefit you to get an early finish. And you saw Rory McDonald talking about it. Was it last year? It was last year, wasn't it? Where after the third fight, the robbery against Gleison Tibau, he was worn out. You kind of see it by him. And this is a guy who said down through the years that he wants to fight more and he wants to get in there more regularly. It can be absolutely tough. So if you're a guy like Collard and a guy like Jeremy Stephens, you're probably thinking, like, if you're Collard, I can knock out Jeremy Stephens. If you're Stephens, you're probably thinking, I can knock out Clay Collard. So it's one of those fights. I think both guys are going to go absolutely hell for leather early. I'm not sure of the winner, to be honest. I might look at the betting odds as the week goes on here and see who's the favourite. I think I would probably go with Collard at this stage, just because I was so impressed with him last year and the way he beat Anthony Pettis too. Look, since coming back from boxing, I remember speaking to him last year and asking what he brought from boxing, and he kind of said, right, I'm a mixed martial artist, and kind of like a little bit avoided the question, but like talked about like little intricacies and little parts of boxing that he brought over, and I think he's using them very well in MMA. And if you're fighting against Stephens, a guy who will strike with you, and you are the better boxer and you could hit maybe harder than him or avoid his shots, I think it could be a good night for Collard. Now, Collard, I think, is the type of guy as well, if he doesn't get you out of there early, he does tire a little bit, and Jeremy Stephens, he can... he's no Cain Velasquez maybe, but he can go all day, as well. So that'll be interesting to see who is going to last the longest if it does go longer, but also who can land that big shot early and get the other lad out of there. So that's one of those fights I'm really looking forward to, and I think will be I think it'll be a real standout fight on this card and maybe this season as well. Rob Wilkinson and Bruce Souto is another one in the light heavyweight division as well there. Rob Wilkinson, we've seen him around for a long time in the UFC, and aside from he's fought Israel Adesanya and the likes of Sair Bahadizarda and others as well. A good fighter with and a finisher. Finished 12 of his 13 fights now. Watching a bit of Bruce Souto. He's coming out of Brazil, and he, like, you look at him and you look at his game, and you see his record, and you see, right, there's 4 KOs and 3 submissions. I think a lot of that is coming from ground and pound. He will go in there and he will take you down. He will make it very, very tough on you. And against a guy like Rob Wilkinson, who, remember that Israel Adesanya fight? He got a few takedowns and he won a fight that way. I don't know who's going to win that battle. I would think it'll probably be Souto. He's getting on as well in age now. He's 32 years of age and 15 and 3, having fought a couple of times once in the PFL, and I think he was a champion over in the LFA association. So that's a big fight in that division. And one of these guys, look, in all of these fights, someone's going to make a run, and especially light heavyweight. We'll talk about Antonio Carlos Jr. later on. If you do get a run in that division, if you do get, if you do get going, you can quickly get into the playoffs. You can quickly get into a big fight. And if you win one big fight, next thing, you are a standout fighter. And you are the likes of Capoloza from last year. You are a Natan Schulte, who people know. And it's a great, it is a great opportunity. It is a really great opportunity. It's weird. It's different, I suppose, in terms of the normal MMA, which we're used to. But that's not a bad thing either. One of the standout fights as well on this card is Stevie Ray against Alex Martinez. I watched a bit of Martinez. Taekwondo guy, very exciting, good on the feet. And he's a very good matchup, I think, for Stevie Ray in his first fight in the PFL. His last fight was in 2019, all the way back against Michael Johnson, who he beat. In the UFC, and he didn't have the worst run in the world. Beat Joe Lozon, beat Ross Pearson. Okay, he lost a few fights to the likes of Paul Felder and Cajun Johnson and things, but Stevie Ray is a guy who I have a lot of time for. I think he's a very, very good fighter. He's a guy who likes to finish fights as well. 14 submissions in his 23. I'll be interested to see if Martinez, if he can kind of get his kicking game going against Stevie Ray and not maybe get drawn into a boxing matchup or not give up the lint, because I think Stevie will try to get inside, maybe even go for a takedown, but push him against the cage, hit him with shots inside, or not even necessarily push him against the cage, but punch him to the body, 1-2s inside, take away maybe those leg kicks. Try to use, if Martinez is allowed to fight on the outside and have a speed battle, I think he'll be probably favoured to win that fight. But if Stevie Ray can keep it at a distance where he can hit Martinez and kind of pressure him in the right way, I think he could win. He could really win that fight. Stevie Ray will probably be a favourite. I haven't seen the betting yet, but I'm really looking forward to that fight. I think it will be a good one. It could be another standout. If you love stand up all out war fights, that'll probably be one. But we'll see how it goes. In the light heavyweight division, then we have another couple of fights. Martin Hamlet against Teodoras Aukstuolis, whose name I practiced beforehand and I did very well. And Omari Akhmedov versus Viktor Pesta. Akhmedov and Pesta been around for a long time. Almost 30 fights with Akhmedov and Pesta. Over 24, and both very, very good. As I said, Akhmedov, strong wrestler, hits hard, and same with Pesta. I suppose a well-rounded fighter. The Hamlet versus Teodoras fight, though, I think is an interesting one, because it is a guy, to me, in Aukstuolis, who haven't watched a few of his fights. Now, a lot of his fights that I looked up on YouTube, they're actually in a ring, and it's a bit harder to decipher, but he's very light on his feet. He hits hard. He's the type of fighter I like. A lovely jab right down through the middle. He's light on his feet, as I mentioned, but takedown defense is the issue, maybe. And when you're fighting someone like Hamlet, who has very, very good takedowns, that might be an issue. He throws that big right hand right down through the middle and just makes it tough on people. He just really does make it tough on people, and I think he'll make it tough here on Aukstuolis as well. I think it could be a long night for him, but looking forward to that one too. I think if you look at Aukstuolis there, his record is 11-5. Let me tell you. Let me just click onto him here on Sherdog and tell you some of the names that he has fought. He fought Carlisle Brexton. He fought Jadib Singh, who we remember fought Fader. He fought Mo Lawal. He fought Bruno Capillosa. That enough. That alone, there's some very, very good fighters on that record, and he's a guy, absolutely not to be messed with. I'm looking forward to seeing him in his first fight over in the PFL and seeing where he can go with that. Before we get into the next few fights, I must tell you that the UFC Fight Night Lemos versus Andrade and the PFL is more fun when you bet over at BetUS.com. Use the code Sherdog and get an incredible 125 bonus up to $2,500. Andrade is the flavour at the moment, so get in now or choose to bet to win via TKO to increase your winnings. At BetUS.com, you can make the fights even more fun by betting throughout the fights. Start the fight at BetUS.com. Use that code Sherdog, SHERDOG. Right, let's talk about some of the other fights. I mentioned earlier on Natan Schulte And he's, been a real standout in the PFL cage over the last few years. Won a couple of PFL titles, if I'm not mistaken, and has, looked good doing it. 21-4, what a record that is. Lost to Marthin held last year, but came back and beat Alex Martinez, as I mentioned, has a win over like Radzhabov, Ahmad Aliyev, Jesse Ronson, who fought last weekend in the UFC, and he's beaten Chris Wade, beaten Jason High, some very, very good names on that record. Olivier Aubin-Mercier obviously came into the PFL last year after losing 3 in a row to in the UFC, lost to some great guys, Saryukin, Burns, Hernandez, but he has wins before that against Anthony Rocco Martin, against Evan Dunham, against Martin Held, who I mentioned in the PFL, Drew Dober, who's been on an unbelievable run. So on his day, he can be a very, very good fighter, and look, they're two good, well-rounded fighters, and this is a fight, I think, that could go anywhere. Anything could happen, and it's one of those fights as well that maybe neither of them are the biggest names in the world. Maybe they're not the ones that the fans are like tuning in for to watch, and it's in like the middle of the card. But this is a high level fight, I think, and the type of fights that I like to see in PFL, and the opportunities maybe that a fighter like them would not get somewhere else, if you get me. Like Natan, Schulte and Olivier Aubin-Mercier would take probably years in the UFC, or maybe even Bellator, to kind of climb the ranks. They'd have to put a big win streak together. Whereas in the PFL, there, as my good friend Graham McDonald always uses the word jeopardy. There is jeopardy in it. All these fights matter. And, a win here for either guy could put them, and will put them a little bit ahead of the other guy in terms of getting to the playoffs and getting to the finals and taking home that $1 million check, which is life-changing for some of these guys. I said it before. Like, if you're a guy in the UFC and you're ranked, let's say in a division like light heavyweight, you're ranked 5 or 6 in that division, maybe you're holding out for a title shot, maybe you're a little bit older, might never get a title shot, and you're getting your 50-50 maybe to fight in UFC main events, or maybe you get a couple of $100,000 if you do get into a main event or something like that. Like, if I was that fighter and I knew I was probably better than most guys in the PFL, I'd be thinking, like, let's jump ship here and let's get that $1 million and I'll sail off into the sunset. So that is a real possibility for lots of these guys, and it's why I have a soft spot for the PFL as well now. Where's the money coming from? How long will it last? And all those are other questions that our guys over in the Fight Business podcast, I'm sure, will answer. But for guys like Schulte and who obviously has won that before, and Aubin-Mercier, who is a good fighter and a very good fighter in PFL, that's it's big for them, I think. Next one I'm going to look at here, Emiliano Sordi. I can never say that name. There's a goalkeeper for Aston Villa, Emiliano. What's his second name? Oh God, I can't remember now. I just had it in my head and then I forgot it. But yeah, Martinez. I can never say that name. Emiliano. Against Joshua Silveira. And another one, like Silveira, watching him, he's a wrestler, southpaw, he's 8-0 in his career now. Sordi is a very, very good fighter. Light on the outside, KOs. He has a few takedowns as well. He took down Chris Camozzi in that fight, but he's a wild fighter, like my sort of fighter. You see the lads there behind me on the wall. He's like them. He is like them. I really enjoy it. But at light heavyweight, the problem is, can you fight that way for 3 rounds? Can you keep going? Especially a guy against like Silveira, who's going to take you down and going to take away that gas tank if you have any issues with it. So that'll be an issue for Sordi. But he has won big fights before, and he's gone long in fights and been able to win them. If you look at Silveira, a lot of experience in LFA. One fight in PFL last year, or this year, even in February. So, in the Challenger Series, sorry. So he will obviously be a little bit, maybe not as fresh, but he'll be well able for it, and looking forward to fighting Sordi here. And then the top 2 fights, I talked about Collard versus Stevens obviously earlier, and I really love that fight. I feel like that should be towards the top of the card, but however it isn't. Antonio Carlos Jr. versus Delan Monte. Now, we all know, I suppose, about Shoeface Antonio Carlos Jr. submissions for days. Will go out and throw hands because he knows, like, if you get a bit mad, or you try to take him down, he's going to submit you probably. Look what happened against Filthy Tom Lawler. He ended up submitting him with a guillotine after almost getting him. I think it was an arm triangle, wasn't it? But one of these guys as well who came, from the UFC, had a good career in the UFC, but was probably going nowhere, and came over and was able to win in the PFL and get get the contract there. Looking at Delan Monte, there's not a pile of tape on him, but what I have seen of him, he's a wrestler. He's very good jiu-jitsu, good submissions and things as well. But you're fighting against Antonio Carlos Jr. Are you going to take him down? Are you going to try to submit him? I don't know. Maybe he will, because it's honestly, I watched two or three of his fights. I think that's all I could find of Monte, and all I could see is wrestling. So it's very hard to know for me, and maybe for Antonio Carlos Jr. as well. Maybe he's somewhere else that can get tape that I don't know about. But how good is Monte striking? I don't know. He seems like a guy who is just going to go in there and take lads down. And as I said again, against Antonio Carlos Jr., that's going to be difficult. So look, I'm looking forward to what Monte has to bring here. I'm wondering what. There must be a reason why he got signed and why the matchmakers put him in there against Antonio Carlos Jr. But I suppose we will find out next weekend. And in the main event, Raush Manfio takes on Madge. This is a very, very good fight. I'm a big fan of this fight, honestly, and of both of these guys. Raush Manfio has had a great run in the PFL. He beat like Radzabov last year, who I'm very, very much a big fan of. Beat Clay Collard and Anthony Pettis before that as well, and also he beat Wilton Leatherback, who is Lutherback even, who is the Brazilian German, a very, very good wrestler. I think he was a Titan FC champion before that, wasn't he? And he's fought Matt Pravola back in the. He lost to him, but he fought DeMarcus Jackson and others on his way up to PFL, and then Madge, came out of the UFC after winning 2 in a row in the UFC. I'm not sure what happened there, but he beat Faraz and beat T. Edwards, and obviously he was unbeaten. Well, not unbeaten, but he had lots of wins in a row over in EFC in Africa. So he's a big star over there, and it would be big for PFL if he could come through here and maybe win this fight. I think this is going to be another stand-up war. Manfio is a Muay Thai guy. He comes out and he throws big strikes. Madge is a southpaw, quick. I think he's quicker than Manfio, and he moves more. And he's a few takedowns. Well, look, they're both good on the ground, and they can, both of these lads can do it all. Madge has 5 KOs and 4 submissions. Manfio, on the other hand, has 7 by KO and no submission. So maybe there is a little bit of an advantage there on the ground for Madge, but I do think this will be one of these fights where it is a stand-up fight, and whoever you like in that maybe is the one who will win. Like, I'm unsure of it, honestly, because I'm a big fan of Manfio. I've watched him a good bit last year. The way he kind of stands he reminds me a little bit of Patricio Pitbull and his brother as well, in that he kind of stands up with you in the middle of the cage and kind of augers you on, and then will throw his big shots from there, whereas Madge will kind of pick you off. Like, I mentioned his jab, but I'll mention it again. An absolutely beautiful jab. He'll run around on the outside, landing that jab in a straight left right down through the middle, and he'll come back and he'll switch stances, but mainly a southpaw. And it's always tricky, it's always tricky when it's a southpaw, but I'm sure as a Muay Thai practitioner, Manfio has seen plenty of them down through the year. So it's an interesting tactical battle, an interesting matchup. I think I would slightly favour Madge, honestly. I would slightly favour him. Maybe he's just like a little bit more well-rounded, a little bit more varied. But honestly, I don't think there's much in it. It's a good main event. I would have made the Collard fight the main event, but it is definitely a good main event, and one that I think people absolutely will tune in for and will be excited to watch, and a good way to get the PFL season started. So as I said, keep tuned in here to Sherdog.com, and we will keep you in tune with the whole season. And as you do that as well, we'll ask you who you're betting on this weekend in the PFL and at the UFC Fight Night, Lemos versus Andrade. Can Lemos beat the odds? Can Lemos beat the odds and defeat Andrade, or is the former champ winning inside the distance a given? Get your bets on this weekend at BetUS.com. Use the code Sherdog and get 125% bonus. BetUS.com has been taking bets for well over 25 years, and there's a reason it's the #1 UFC sportsbook. With more betting options, live betting at games, BetUS.com is your new home for UFC betting. Start the fight at betus.com. Use that code Sherdog, SHERDOG. Alright, everybody, that's it from me for today. Looking forward to the fights this weekend. Lots of them to look forward to, but the PFL starts it all off, and I hope you enjoy that. My name is Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and I'll see you all next time.